Superman, issue 32, legacy number 875. Joshua Williamson writing with Eddie Barrows on the art. So, Superwoman, Lois has her powers back. That was the reveal at the end of last issue.
Yeah, and I like that the reasoning is like, don't think about it. Timey-wimey.
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
Superboy Prime just says we're in an event, so the rules about timelines and continuity are a little bit in flux, and I'm like, all right, whatever. I don't even know what to say to that.
This is the ultimate type of Williamson issue, where there's things that I was enjoying, and then there's other things that just feel like a tie-in to what's going on, and there's some similar panels to what's going on in KO. You know, we see some repeated things, and then, you know, we get the whole backstory of Lex, which I feel like this amount of exposition I didn't really need. This issue, because the thing I liked about the last issue of Superman was all that stuff with Lois going to question like the Lara and like the history of Doomsday or Darkseid being related to Krypton and all that stuff. That was good, right? And then it kind of got a little bit just wonky tie-in stuff at the end. This issue is all wonky tie-in stuff. It's basically some fighting with Lois and Superboy Prime versus the Darkseid Legion, right? And some stuff with them. And then a big chunk of the issue is Lex basically explaining to Superman, presumably before they went to round 2, so it's maybe set right before issue 2 of KO, where Superman's like, how did you get here? And Lex says, aha, let me tell you. And he basically just explains that, yeah, his like select crew never went to the Phantom Zone. They were just hard light constructs. And because he knew they were coming for them. So he planned ahead, and they were secretly hiding the entire time. So it's like, okay, fine. Also, I take umbrage with Jarro being there, because Jarro is a good guy. There's no way they would have needed to put Jarro in the Phantom Zone, you know? Yeah. So, yeah.
Honestly, this is classic tie-in stuff where it's like something that didn't really need to be elaborated on gets a whole issue elaborated on how it happened, and I'm like, it didn't matter. Yes. It did not matter.
No, but I do like the Lex and Joker stuff here, which I gotta say, if I have to pick one thing that I think it did successfully was, you know, Joker shows up at the Legion of Doom, and you know, you can feel that Lex is like, well, he can't win either, right? So now he's also playing against them as well. So I did like that vibe, however brief that it was.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was weird. They did the whole meta thing with Superboy Prime early on, where he says what I said before, like, oh, it's an event, things are in flux. But then later on, they bring up the tournament, and he's like, wait, what tournament? And then like she has to explain to him what the tournament, the KO tournament is, and he's like, man, there's a murdering tournament going on, and I'm missing it. And I'm like, but you knew it was an event. What event did you?
Why didn't you show up on the satellite? Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
It doesn't.
And
I did, like you said, I'd be popping heads off. That's just like, all right, there's the spirit edgelord.
And then he shows up with what looks like Superman, but it turns out to be a Superman robot. And then he's got like an army of like old Superman robots from like deep in the fortress somewhere. And he's like, yep, let's go off and get to Time Trapper. And it teases the Booster Gold thing at the end again. So I'm glad I read KO first. I think typically the rule of thumb is that when there's an event book out and there's tie-ins out in the same week, always read the event issue first before the tie-ins. Always.
That Blackest Night taught me that.
Yeah.
Read, if they come out the same week as something else, read that first, because you're gonna get spoiled. As much as I want to like the idea of these Superman robots, why are they all from different eras? It's like there's an electric blue Superman. There's post, you know, death of Superman in the black suit there. Like, I know why they're there, but storyline, why are these all different? Like,
Williamson wanted Eddie Barrows to draw all these different eras of Superman. That's why they're there.
Yeah, I know that, but like storyline wise, I don't, you know, I did like the turn of the Lois thinking that it's Cyborg Superman. And I was like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense with whatever. And then it's like, oh no, they're the Superman robots. And I was just like, okay. And then you get down to the bottom and it's like, I like seeing all the different Superman suits represented here. That's really cool. But like,
storyline wise, there's kind of no reason. They should all just be just Superman, right? Like,
yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, maybe you could say that they're all like one old era because that's when they were built, so they could all be like mid-90s, and that would make some sense.
Yeah.
But them all being different is kind of weird. Yeah, honestly, this issue is just kind of like, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's just such a tie-in issue. And because I started it, I went, well, what's this going to be? Because the whole thing last time, up until the ending, was about, okay, tying into the history of Krypton and what Lara and Ursa, was it Ursa? Yeah, it was Ursa, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, Lara and Ursa. What they found underground in Krypton, and I was like, okay, that was actually a cool little detail, and I like that they're exploring that. But this issue got into it, I was like, okay, what's this going to be now that she has powers again? Which is not something I'm entirely that excited about. And it ends up being half filling in this weird blank between Superman and Lex, which feels like it's not even should be the focus of the book, it should all just be on Lois. And then it's just them fighting in the fortress, so we never leave where we were at the end of last issue with the what I would call the main characters of this book right now. I would say Lois and Superboy Prime are the main characters of this right now. They just fight for a bit, and then it just kind of ends with them saying, yeah, let's go and get those kryptonite archives to so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay. So very little was accomplished here. And I think one of the things that gets me about event tie-ins sometimes is because they are feeling the need to like recap a little bit of the event and just sort of, but they have to sort of jump and dance around it. It feels really kind of like, I don't know, like we're jumping all over the place to try and fit around the central thing, because we can't just do a story from start to finish. We have to kind of wrap around something else. And I really felt that here with like Superman and Lex talking during KO, and then flashbacks to before KO, but then flashing to during KO with Lois and Superboy Prime, and like it just there's a lot of jumping around, and it happens not just in this book either. But it's definitely an event tie-in issue, because I've seen this numerous times. It always happens during events with the tie-ins, and this is just, you know, the latest one that's guilty of it. And the thing I liked about last issue was, you know, other than referencing the need to keep the information from the archives, it didn't factor into anything other than just being a MacGuffin. So, not a lot to appreciate here in that sense. Eddie Barrow's art is good. I think some pages are better than others. There's some pages where it's not like he's maybe not got as much time, or it doesn't play to his strengths as much. But I do like his art in a lot of the pages. But that's about as positive as I'm going to really get. I think
the what looks like the title page for an issue of KO, where it's got Superman versus Captain Atom, Lex Luthor versus the Demon fight. That looks so good. Like Barrows is killing it there, because you got like the really moody looking like Metropolis in the background of the top panel with the lightning bolt going through, and then Lex and the Demon, you know, doing the essentially Civil War pose, right, with Cap and Iron Man, but it's the Demon shooting fire breath and Lex blocking it. It just they're so complimentary, and I think it looks really, really good. But then some of the other stuff, like sometimes his faces are a bit too square, you know, kind of gets a little bit JR territory. Not nearly as bad, but you know, just looking at some of these. But no, other than that, I mean, it's mostly good, I would say, the art.
Yeah. The book as a whole, maybe not quite as much, but superfluous, I would say, if I was to put a word on it. A bit messy and superfluous, but what are you giving Superman 32, Matt?
I'm going to give this a 7.5.
It's a bit on the high side, I would say. I will give this it was very readable, so I'll give it a kind 6. You know, I enjoyed some of the art. It's very readable, but I'm not going any higher than a 6.